In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to get from 0 to 2000 ELO. Stage 1, 1000. To get to 1000 ELO, all you need to do is to focus on calculation. That determines every single game that you're playing at this stage, because who is going to blunder less is going to win. You don't care that much about opening variations. Just choose whatever suits you. I, for example, strongly recommend this Collie-Zuckertor system for white. Everything you need to know in one playlist. I have done it for you here on YouTube, but doesn't matter. Just choose one that works and focus on those main principles. Always fight for the center. Those are the pieces that you need to bring to the game. Every single one of them, except for the king. The king needs to stay in safety, and that's all you need to know about openings. Just make sure you don't blunder in one move. This is the golden principle at this level. By the way, we are playing against Maya at 1100 ELO level, so that is exactly what you need to beat everyone at this point. And we are following exactly this Collie-Zuckertor system, where you place your bishop on d3, this knight on f3, and this second bishop on b2. And that way all of your pieces are very active, and you know exactly what to do later on after the opening. You want to bring your knight to e5. This is the golden idea. You can do it immediately or afterwards, doesn't really matter, but it helps you to get this plan going every single move, in every single game, sorry. Here you castle, you make sure your king is safe so that you can go all in with your attack. Very important at this stage that you put enormous attention to your opponent's moves. He plays queen to b6. You should ask, in this case, Maya, you should ask yourself what kind of ideas she has. Well, she's attacking this d4 pawn. Is it dangerous for me? Well, if you calculate a lone variation like knight takes, bishop takes, queen takes, it turns out you have this fancy move bishop takes h7 and you actually win the queen. But it's all very complicated at this level. At this level, it's important just not to blunder. So let's focus on that. Let's think he's attacking the pawn. He has two attackers, you have one defender, not enough. So that's a problem. How do you solve that problem? You can just take this knight on c6. Personally, I wouldn't make this move. I would rather play rook e1 and continue attacking. But okay, let's say not to blunder something is much more important than anything else. And now we just develop our pieces. And ideally, we want even to bring the second knight all the way to e5. Notice how strong Maya plays. It's only 1100, but actually I have to admit it plays very strong, and the whole idea of this artificial intelligence bot is to imitate the humans play, and I have to say it's very different from what Stockfish at this level is playing, much stronger as well. But okay, we need to bring every single one of our pieces into the game. Let's focus on that. Nothing fancy. One move's variations in most of the cases are enough for you to win everybody at this level. Maybe two, max. So every single time our opponent makes a move, we think what kind of a threat he created. He attacked this pawn, but it's protected, so that's not a big deal. On the other hand, what is the most active move that we can make? Always think checks and captures. Well, we don't have any checks, but we can just take this guy on c5, so let's just do that. Now, our opponent is creating a threat, or we have to think whether we have a problem. Again, simple calculation. By the way, how do you improve it? Well, you solve as many puzzles as possible. I have created specific videos to help you with that, how exactly you do that, but basically go to LeeChess or chess.com, click on puzzles, and solve as much as you can. It's not about specific ratings that you need to achieve. It's not about a certain amount of correct answers that you need to get. It's about this process of deliberate practice, of you working on those puzzles that helps you so much at this level. Even like analyzing your games, which is generally an extremely useful thing in chess, at this level is not that important as just solving those puzzles, and treat your real games just as those puzzles. For example, he played bishop takes c5. What is the threat he created? Always think about checks and captures first. Bishop f2 is a huge check threat, so we don't want that to happen. How can we deal with that? Well, we have multiple ways, but the simplest is, for example, bishop d4, just to block that, and then it's not a problem at all. Now, let's take it back with the queen, with the knight, doesn't matter. Important is we don't blunder. It takes, again, important to take it back. The knight is generally a very good piece in the center. But our opponent is playing very strong. I have to say, much stronger than I expected here. But okay, again, what kind of a threat she created? The pawn on c2 is protected, but the rook is still pretty active there along the file. So I would like maybe to defend it somehow, but I see, again, thinking about the opponent's response, that she wants to play knight to e4, and this knight will be very, very strong here. Another idea she has in mind is to play e5, and then our pawn on c2 would actually be hanging. So maybe I can prevent that by just defending my pawn. Very simple. She attacks, I defend. She goes forward here, and let me do the same. Let me go forward and try to be as active as possible. It takes, I take it back, knight to d2. Okay, what kind of a threat she created? She attacked this pawn on c4, so I don't want to lose it. How can I do that? I can just move it forward. What kind of a threat she created? Attacked the knight. I don't want to lose it, so I have to move it. As simple as that. Every single time, ask yourself, what is the threat? She attacks the knight. I don't want to lose it, so I move it, and in the best case scenario, I always go forward. Go back only if you don't have any other options. Finally, we have a free move there where no threats are created. This rook is not attacking anything, so we can move our pieces like we wanted to do, and we always want to create our own threats. We always want to create as many problems as we possibly can, so I played this easy move, rook to e to d1, to improve my rook's position and attack this knight at the same time. Now, our opponent played the move rook to b2, defending that knight. Very logical. And now we think, okay, how can we make an active move? How can we do something useful for ourselves? Well, we want to go forwards. We always want to create those threats. And in this position, we can just push our pawn forward. Yes, we lose our knight, but remember that when the pawn reaches the last rank, it always promotes into the queen. So it's worth it if you want to achieve that, to sacrifice our knight. That is why our opponent is also sacrificing the knight, just to try to stop that pawn. Very simple. We don't really have a choice. We just take all of those pieces. Don't overcomplicate it. The chess at this level. You don't need anything fancy. In fact, I'm pretty surprised our opponent didn't blunder anything, which is kind of unusual at this level, but still, in the end of the day, because we are focused on our strengths, remember we had this little pawn on c2, we pushed it forward all the way through until it became the queen, and now we have an extra rook. How do we win with an extra rook? Well, the simplest is to create a passer, so we can just attack that pawn. And once we have the passer, we want just to push it for the second time in this game, push it forward up to the point where you create a queen. Then once you have a queen, it's much simpler for you to deliver a checkmate. b4, a7, and we are ready. You see that Maya, even without any pieces at all, tries to be active, and that's the philosophy that I want you to take. But of course, at this point, it's way too late. How do you give a checkmate? Well, you're trying to be as active as possible, bring all of your pieces into the attack. For example, in this case, this queen and this rook, and that is enough to deliver a checkmate. Stage 2, 1500 ELO. To achieve this goal, you still have to calculate a lot. This is still the #1 factor that determines your chess success. But at this point, it's important also to have this solid opening, both for white and black. It starts to become important, yet you still do not want to overcomplicate it. You still do not want to memorize those endless lines or to dive deep into opening traps. All of that is not important. Essential is to focus on the principles and have one opening, one very solid opening that you understand very well for white, and the same for black. I have an entire playlist, both for white and for black, of openings that will give you absolutely everything you need to know to get to 2000 ELO level. But yeah, at this stage, it's just important that you understand the ideas very well instead of memorizing like every single variation. Okay, so all I am doing here is just developing my pieces, then I castle, bringing my king to safety, and then I want to play in the center. In most of the cases, you always want to play in the center. Bring every single one of your pieces towards the center. Like bishop, for example, is a tricky piece. It could stand on the side, but still be very active along the entire diagonal. And then we want to play in the center. Control it, and as always, we still think what kind of threats our opponent is creating. But at this level, we become a little bit more sophisticated, so we think maybe a few variations, a few moves forward. For example, he's attacking our opponent c4. Yes, we can play b3, but before playing that, we have to think what kind of active moves our opponent has. And it turns out it can take on e4 because he has that pin. So you see, now it's not one move, but two moves variation that are essential. And that is why you continue solving as many puzzles as possible at this stage, but add to it a little bit of practical tips, practical strategic principles that you have to know, and this channel is a perfect place for you to acquire all of that. Bishop g4, does it create any threats? No, it's not. Then let's focus on the development, bring another piece into the game. He takes. That's a problem for us. Let's just take it back. But now we have a pair of bishops. For example, this channel would help you a lot to understand that if you have a pair of bishops, you want to open up the position. That is how the bishops are so strong, and that is how you use that to your advantage. If the position is closed, then the bishops are not that great. Just by the way, the case here. Yet, you still think what kind of threats your opponent creates, and I don't like the fact that Maya can play knight to e5, attacking both of my pawn and my bishop. So I'm thinking, how can I save both of them? Well, the way to do that is to play queen to f1, because now after knight e5, I can just step back to e2, protecting it twice, and I have saved my pair of bishops advantage. Now, as I have mentioned before, we want to be active, we want to create those problems, so I want to make this move f4. Very active attacking that knight. But before doing that, I have to think about my opponent's ideas, right? At this level, we are a little bit more complex, more sophisticated, so we don't just make the move automatically. We always think what our opponent can do in response. And he plays this move knight to g4, which is a little bit annoying because then the bishop comes to d4. But before we execute our idea, we play this move h3, stopping the knight from going to g4, and then we are ready to play f4. Again, before doing that, though, we think what kind of moves our opponent is making, what kind of threats he's creating. f5, well, the pawn on e4 is protected, so that's not a problem. We can play f4 anyway. Now he comes all the way back to f7. He needed to play that move f7 to save his knight, but now here is everything solid. We can improve our bishop, put more pressure on this f5 pawn. We could have taken on f5 ourselves. That's like both moves are possible as long as you don't blunder stuff. Here we need to decide how do we take it. I might notice the problem, and now actually that I think about it, I think it was better to take on f5 because the f file is still opened and he can use it by playing knight to e5. Remember, this queen is still there. So of course, we are making mistakes. At this level, we are not perfect by any means. It's important to cope with those mistakes, to understand the problems. I don't think actually that it's so bad. We can just take it back. And he created a huge weakness for himself, this e6 square. And I want to use that to our advantage. Okay, he's not playing knight e5 just yet, which gives us time to solve this problem with the queen. I can just play queen g2 so that it's not on the same file with my opponent's rook, and then knight e5 move is not possible anymore. Well, he plays the move e5, very active, I like that. Do we take it? We can take it en passant or take it there. I don't like both of those. Again, here you start thinking a little bit strategically. Like if we take on e5, for example, then we give this beautiful outpost for our opponents, for all of his pieces, basically. Do we want that? Well, not really. Do we take on e6? That might make a little bit more sense, because then this f4 pawn still controls all of that. But yeah, we give up our beautiful pawn on d5, maybe also not needed. So maybe we just ignore all of that and make something useful for ourselves. So far, we still haven't developed this rook, and I actually like this move rook b1, because maybe I can create my counterplay. You see that my opponent gathered all of his pieces there and tries to attack me there, so maybe I can create some problems for him on the other side of the board. Now he takes, and his idea is still to free this square on e5 for his pieces. And I really don't want him to do that. That is why I want to take with the pawn. Bishop d4 check. Well, that's okay. This bishop is very strong, so the exchange might work. How do you decide which pieces to exchange and which not? Well, you always think in terms of which piece is better. This bishop on d4 was more active than my bishop on c1. That's why I exchanged it. The material is equal, so that's okay for me. In case, though, the situation would be different and you would have some material disadvantage, then basically you never want to exchange your stuff. Okay, now this center has opened. Oops, sorry. So it's too late for me to launch some attack here. It's important to gather all of my pieces in the center. When the center is opened, then you need to play with your pieces here. You might be wondering, what is this magic board I use in my videos? It's called Chess.Not EVO. And I enjoy it so much, I have it for a year now. It completely transformed the way I play chess and I train chess, because I can play both on Chess and chess.com online, but on a real board. It's a completely different experience and I enjoy it a lot. I haven't had any major issues, and that's my favorite product from Chess.Not, because I have everything in one place. I have my books here, I have my studies here, I have my games, but they have so many different products according to your needs and your budget. The best part is, of course, you can use the link in the description as well as the promo code Journey to Grandmaster to get a big discount on all Chess.Not products. Now, back to video. Okay, here it's very important to think about our active opportunities. Whenever you have developed all of your pieces, optimized it to the fullest potential, you have to think, maybe I have some active opportunities. And of course, our magical system, checks, captures, and threats, CCT, helps you here. The only reasonable check I have here is knight to f6, but I also like it a lot because it's a royal fork. I'm winning the queen if he doesn't take it, but if he takes, two moves variation, as simple as that. I'm attacking that rook and I have more attackers than he has defenders, so I'm allowed to do that. Yes, that's exactly what happens. You don't want to miss such opportunities, because that's the difference between winning the game and losing it. And not to lose it, you have to start with those most active opportunities for yourself. Okay, how can I continue there? I want to bring more pieces into the attack. Almost always that's the best strategy. For example, this queen is not participating yet, and I can bring it all the way to g5 to create more difficulties for my opponent. Now I can just exchange it and play the rook to e7, but unfortunately my queen would be hanging. Okay, let's start step by step. We can take first and now think how can we continue the attack, because I like this move queen to d8, just not to lose our queen there, and now we are good to go with the move rook to e7. If we go with this rook, we don't even need to consider any checks from our opponent. That's how we win the game. And then to convert our advantage, all we need to do is normally exchange the pieces. If we have a huge material advantage, we have an extra queen, so just exchange everything that moves, and that would simplify your task a lot. As always, remember that you want to create passers to be able to win in the endgame. You want to create them, for example, this d6 pawn, and then promote them. Okay, don't blunder any pins. Any forks, sorry. For example, king h1 is the best possible position against this knight, so that no checks are possible. One square away diagonally, and then we push our pawn. Okay, we can both attack that knight and push the pawn immediately. Let's just play that move, because now we can, let's say, give a check and push our pawn even more forward. Just check where the knight is controlling the pawn and don't allow it to do that. Queen d6. And now we've, finally win that knight and are able to promote a new queen. Very important to deliver a checkmate. And now the most important thing, how do you actually get to 2000 ELO in chess? At this stage, you have to divide your time between calculation, between general strategic principles, and between opening understanding. You still go forward with that one opening for white and for black. Maybe you add another one if needed, but not necessary. But you deepen your understanding hugely at this point. You want to understand where the pieces belong, what you are trying to achieve in the opening, and how to transition into the middle games, what kind of plans you have afterwards. So this is exactly what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to still develop all of my pieces, but I know more in terms of where the pieces belong. I don't guess it. I rather understand what is the most optimal square for it. Okay, my opponent is playing very aggressively here. So, of course, remember, we are always fighting for the center, doesn't matter which opening we are playing, and we combine that with developing our pieces. And then finally, the third goal is castles. We are achieving all of that. And then we need to be active. As white, we are trying to apply as much pressure. So at this point, you include many more strategic principles into your chess. You have to have a consistent strategic idea throughout your chess game, because many people struggle to achieve 2000 exactly for the reason that they make one move here, one move there. They don't have a plan. And if you fail to plan in chess, you plan to fail. That is why you need to understand what your idea should be. How do you do that? Well, you combine your strengths in the position with your opponent's weaknesses. For example, this pawn structure, it feels extremely strong for my opponent, but that's exactly the point. I need to attack it. I need to create problems, difficulties for it. For example, I can play this move Queen b3, which at the same time attacks a new, develops a new piece, sorry, and attacks my opponent, so creates a problem for him. Now I can even make the move c5 and create yet another problem for him so that he wastes a lot of time. You want to achieve those key opening goals for yourself, but you also want to stop your opponent. Every single time your opponent has to make multiple moves with the same piece, or he cannot castle. That is a small achievement for yourself, and the more things like that you get, the simpler it gets for you, the more problems you're able to create, and the higher your chances to win. Okay, now we need a target, this pawn on e4, and how can we attack that? Well, we can play f3 and just eliminate that. It takes. Now we need to decide, do we take it with the pawn or with the piece? I think all of the moves are possible, but knight to f3 feels the most consistent, just so that we open up our own bishop and can develop it very good and bring even more pieces to the center, make even more pieces active. For example, this last piece, the rook, comes here as well. And now we even can bring our knight to e5. So you see that it's all connected. Still, same as in the first stage of your chess journey, you still try to achieve the same goals, but your understanding deepens a lot. If you want to help, for example, with the opening, with the transition into the middle game, understanding how to navigate your openings and middle games, I have created an entire course, 10-day opening mastery, where inside of just 10 days, you can build a complete and holistic lifetime opening repertoire, both for white and black. It removes the entire headache from yourself for many years to come, so that you can just enjoy the game of chess without this horrible memorization. The link would be in the description. And now, once the opening is over and we have developed our pieces, we need to continue with our strategic idea, because it seems like we have so many of our pieces in the center. We have to play in the center, but remember, we always think what kind of threats our opponent created. And the problem is this d4 pawn is hanging. Naturally, you would play the move e3, but the problem with that is that my bishop on f4. Remember, you always think about your opponent's threats and ideas. This bishop on f4 doesn't actually have any moves to go. He has this g5 move. So that's quite a challenge to solve. We can play bishop to e3. Maybe that's the best move, even though it blocks our rook, which is suboptimal, but we don't lose the pawn, we don't lose anything. Now, again, queen c7, what kind of threats he created? Seems like nothing, but if you really think about it, he can take on c5, and then the knight on e5 would be hanging. So I want to bring that knight back. Okay, but now he creates yet another problem. Knight to g4, attacking my bishop, and this d4 pawn is also hanging if I go away. Luckily, I think I still have the move bishop f4, because that's attacking the queen, creates a bigger counter threat. But I feel now that if I'm going to continue that manner, my opponent is creating so many problems for me that I'm going to struggle. So I have to fight for this initiative. This is the problem number one that I notice everyone under 2000 ELO is having, including the members of ELO Accelerated Academy, where I analyze my members' games and give you the personalized feedbacks on your games. People are just not active enough. They are playing too passive, not creating enough problems for the opponent, and that makes their life much more difficult. Okay, my opponent plays bishop g5. He's actually doing the opposite. He's incredibly active, creating as many problems as possible. And I don't like it, because if I just step back with the rook, he's going to play bishop e3 check. and now the d4 pawn will be hanging. This is so horrible. So I'm thinking maybe I can be very active right now and start counterattacking, sacrificing some stuff, because I do have some activity. A lot of my pieces are very active, so maybe I can use that to my advantage. Like knight takes d5 is the move I'm thinking, but I'm gonna be so much material down. That is pretty sad, to be honest. I can just sacrifice in exchange by not removing my rook. Maybe that would be the best, actually. Rook to f1, because my opponent still has some difficulties with his development. Not all of the pieces are developed, and I hope to use that to my advantage. Knight is 3. For example, I can play knight to e5 now, attacking that guy on f7, creating a problem for him. He takes on g2, and you don't automatically take it back. You first think about the active opportunities. Doesn't matter how great your opponent's move seems to be and how obvious the answer seems to be. Because I think I have this move rook f7. Of course, I don't make it immediately, but I have to think about it. So rook takes, queen takes, knight takes. Now, if he just goes back, I go back with my knight as well, and I have won a queen for the rook and knight. That would be a great exchange. And if he takes my knight, then I takes his knight as well. So I think this variation works for me. It's essential that you calculate those lines, but if you believe in it, then please go. Don't be afraid. Don't miss those active opportunities just because, for example, you cannot calculate it till the end. If you feel that's the right move, then please go for it. Even if you have made a mistake, you're gonna learn so much. By the way, this changes hugely at this stage of your chess journey. You absolutely have to analyze as many of your games as possible. In the best case scenario, every single game you play, you analyze it. Be it with your coach, be it in the ELO Accelerator Academy where I analyze it for you, or you just do it yourself with the chess engine. You see where you have made mistakes. The game review feature, of course, both on Lee Chess and chess.com, helps you a lot with that. It highlights the key moments for you. But basically what's essential is that you always understand where you made those mistakes, and very important, why you have made those mistakes. I have to take here, because now I'm just taking a lot of material. Still, you don't overcomplicate things. Remember that passers are essential in chess to be able to win, so that's what you are doing. And I'm grabbing so many pawns here. Yes, I also lose one, but that's okay, as long as my king is safe. For example, king to g1 would be checkmate move, checkmate blunder in 1. So I always think about my opponent's opportunities first, and then I want to be as fast with my passer as possible, so that my opponent doesn't have time to create some threats against my king. d5, again, c7 might feel like an active move, but after rook to c8, I would lose my pawn, which is not great. So I'm thinking what my opponent can do. Yes, now he plays that and threatens my own king. I'm pretty sure the king would be able to run all the way through and hide somewhere there behind the pawns. So I'm gonna just play c7 now and create some problems, because once your pawn reaches the 7th rank, you create those huge threats, and it will be like a deflection from for your opponent. This rook now cannot leave the c file, which limits his attacking potential so much. King to g6. King to g5. You're always looking for ways to avoid all of the checks as possible when your opponent is attacking. By the way, queen takes f2 is probably the simplest thing. Yeah, let's just do it. You always want to simplify the situation when you have material advantage, and now I'm basically win the rook because I immediately create yet another queen, and now I still have a passer, so I don't need to be fancy. Just, let's say, play queen to c7 and be ready to promote. Again, nothing fancy. I can take a pawn. I take a pawn. Rook g6. I need to hide from the checks. King to g2. And the pawn is coming, and I can even promote another. Somehow today I'm promoting a lot of queens here. Avoid the checks. And the queen is coming. How do you understand what kind of mistakes you make in the games? This is very important. A lot of people ask me how to analyze your games correctly. Well, first of all, you go about those critical moments in the game and try to understand why you made those mistakes. So do it yourself. Like you see, okay, here I made the mistake. Try to understand why you have made this move and not something else. The way to do that, turn on the engine, like you have seen the right move. Now think what kind of ideas you had throughout the game, and it helps you if you do it fresh, like if you have played the game and immediately afterwards you analyze because you still remember what went through your mind. Very essential. Understanding your mistakes and analyzing your games would bring you so much forward in chess. All right, how do I give a checkmate here? How do I make sure I don't blunder a stalemate? Probably queen f4, and then I play king to f5, then I play queen e7. So I provoke my opponents. Don't play queen f7 here, that would be a stalemate, but now I push my opponent's king to h5 and finally deliver a checkmate. And in this video you will learn the only opening you will ever need to crush everyone under 2000 ELO.